Admiral Zexanor paced the command deck of the Eternal Dominance, his clawed feet clicking against the polished floor. The holographic displays around him showed the remains of his first wave-burning wreckage scattered across Earth's upper atmosphere. Nearly 100 ships lost in less than an hour. It was unprecedented in the Dominion's 1,000-year history of conquest. "How?" he demanded, his voice a low hiss. "How did a pre-spacefaring civilization develop weapons capable of penetrating our shields?" Science Officer Melchora approached cautiously, holding a data tablet. "Admiral, we've analyzed the debris from our destroyed ships and intercepted human communications. The truth is... disturbing." She activated a display showing images of Earth taken over the past 50 Earth years. "They've been deceiving us, deceiving everyone. These humans have deliberately maintained an appearance of technological backwardness, while secretly developing advanced defensive capabilities." The display showed seemingly primitive satellites being launched, but then revealed hidden compartments and systems that remained inactive until the Carthian arrival. "Their entire technological development has been a carefully crafted illusion," Melchora continued. "Their public space programs use outdated chemical rockets and simple satellites. While in secret, they've built an extensive defense network." Zexanor's 4 eyes narrowed. "No species goes to such lengths without reason. They were expecting an attack. They were waiting for someone like us." "There's more," said Melchora, her voice dropping. "We've detected energy signatures that match our own technology. Not exactly, but similar enough to suggest they've encountered Carthian devices before." A cold realization settled over the Admiral. The lost scout ship, 70 Earth years ago. "We thought it was destroyed in an asteroid collision, but it must have crashed on their planet. They've had decades to study it," agreed Melchora, "to understand our weaknesses." Zexanor turned to his tactical display, studying the remaining 9,800 ships of his fleet. Despite the shocking first encounter, he still commanded the most powerful armada in this sector of the galaxy. The humans had surprised them, yes, but they could not possibly stand against the full might of the Carthian Dominion. "Prepare all ships for combat," he ordered, his voice hardening. "No more careful approaches, no more stealth. We will descend on their world with such overwhelming force that no defense system, no matter how advanced, could possibly withstand it." Throughout the massive fleet, warriors prepared for battle. Weapon systems charged, shield frequencies were randomized to prevent easy targeting, and ground forces readied for deployment. This time, there would be no underestimation of the enemy. "All ships, commence attack," commanded Zexanor. The sight was terrifying to behold. Thousands of Carthian warships descended toward Earth like a metallic storm cloud, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. They came not in formation, but in a deliberate, chaotic pattern to confuse targeting systems. The sky above Earth darkened as the armada blocked out the sun over entire continents in major cities across the planet. Humans looked up in horror at the approaching ships. Many fled to underground shelters built in secret over decades for this very purpose. Military commanders in hidden bunkers activated the next phase of Earth's defense plan. The Carthian ships opened fire. Disintegrator beams sliced through skyscrapers as if they were made of paper. Massive explosions bloomed across city skylines as buildings collapsed. Fires raged through urban areas, and thick smoke rose into the atmosphere. Direct hits on major population centers, reported Sub-Commander Vextel. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo, under heavy bombardment. Zexanor watched the destruction with satisfaction. This was more like the conquests he was accustomed to, swift, overwhelming, and merciless. The humans had put up an impressive first defense, but now they would learn the true meaning of Carthian power. Then something unexpected happened again. From what appeared to be destroyed cities, swarms of tiny objects rose into the air. Thousands. Then millions of them, each no bigger than a grain of sand. "What are those?" demanded Zexan. "Or are?" His question was answered as the swarms surrounded Carthian ships. The tiny objects, nanobots, attached themselves to the crystalline hulls and began to burrow inside. Eating through the supposedly impenetrable material like acid through paper. "Hull breaches on multiple vessels," cried Vextel. The humans have deployed some kind of self-replicating nano-weapon. Ships began to fail as the nanobots reached critical systems, disrupting power conduits and navigation controls. Some vessels lost control entirely, crashing into each other or plummeting toward the ground. Others managed to destroy the tiny attackers with energy pulses, but not before taking significant damage. On the surface, the ground battle was going no better for the invaders. Carthian troops landed in what remained of major cities, expecting to find cowering survivors. Instead, they encountered human soldiers equipped with weapons that seemed designed specifically to combat them. "They're using pulse rifles that disrupt our neural networks," reported Ground Commander Trasker. "One hit, and our warriors cannot move or communicate. And Admiral ... The humans are fighting with unusual ferocity. They show no fear, only determination." More disturbing reports flooded in. The underground facilities that humans had retreated to were not simple shelters, but sophisticated military bases. The apparent destruction on the surface was misleading. Critical infrastructure and command centers remained untouched, protected deep underground. Admiral called Science Officer Melkora urgently. "I've completed analysis of the human weapons. They're not just similar to our technology, they're adaptations of it. They've taken Carthian principles and modified them, sometimes improving upon our designs." Zexanor stared at the data in disbelief. "That's impossible. It would take centuries to understand our technology well enough to modify it." Melkora hesitated. "Unless they had help, or unless they're not what they appear to be." As the battle raged on, Carthian casualties mounted. Over 500 more ships had been damaged or destroyed, and ground forces were being pushed back on all fronts. And now a new pattern emerged that sent a chill through Zexanor's body. "The humans are systematically targeting certain ships," observed Vextal. "Not to destroy them completely, but to disable them in ways that preserve key technologies. They're collecting our weapons." The realization hit Zexanor like a physical blow. This isn't just a defense. They wanted this confrontation. They prepared for it, waited for it, perhaps even encouraged it. He watched as human recovery teams moved with astonishing efficiency to secure Carthian technology from downed ships. They seemed to know exactly what they were looking for, harvesting specific components while ignoring others. "They're using us," he whispered, "using our own invasion to accelerate their technological development by centuries." In that moment, Admiral Zexanor understood that he had led his fleet into something far more dangerous than a simple conquest. The humans had set a trap, and the Carthian Dominion had walked right into it. What had begun as a routine invasion was rapidly becoming the greatest military disaster in their history, and as reports of more ship losses poured in, a terrifying question formed in the Admiral's mind. What exactly were these humans planning to do with all that Carthian technology? The answer, he feared, would soon reveal itself, and when it did, the 9,900 ships he had brought might not be nearly enough. The darkness behind Earth's moon shimmered and tore open as if reality itself was being ripped apart. From this swirling vortex emerged ship after ship, each one sliding silently into position with perfect military precision. They came in waves, hundreds, then thousands, until 9,900 warships hung in the void, their crystalline hulls reflecting the distant sunlight in flashes of cold blue and purple. This was the invasion fleet of the Carthian Dominion, conquerors of 17 star systems and the undisputed masters of their corner of the galaxy. Admiral Zexanor stood on the command deck of the flagship Eternal Dominance, his 4 eyes narrowed. As he studied the holographic display of the blue-green planet before him, Earth, the name itself, meant nothing. To him it was simply Target World 3782, another resource-rich planet to be added to the Empire. His gray-scaled skin tightened around his mouth in what passed for a smile among his kind. This would be his 100th conquest, a fitting milestone for the Dominion's greatest military leader. "Scans complete, Admiral," reported Sub-Commander Vextal, her voice carrying the musical tones of the warrior caste. "Primitive defenses as expected. Their most advanced weapons are chemical-propelled projectiles and crude nuclear devices. No unified planetary government. No orbital defense. Systems beyond basic communication satellites, population approximately 8 billion. Zexanor nodded, his head crest expanding slightly in anticipation. Their transmissions? Still analyzing, but mostly entertainment broadcasts, commercial communications, and rudimentary data transfers. They call themselves humans. Their technology level indicates they have not yet achieved reliable interplanetary travel beyond their own moon. The Admiral turned to the strategic display where the invasion plan was laid out in precise detail. Perfect. Proceed with standard conquest protocol. First wave of 300 ships to establish air superiority and broadcast surrender terms. Second wave will secure major population centers. The rest will provide orbital support and begin resource extraction once resistance is eliminated. Throughout the massive fleet, warriors prepared for battle, though few expected much of a fight. The Carthians had conquered worlds far more advanced than Earth without losing more than a handful of ships. Their dark matter drives gave them near-instantaneous maneuverability. Their quantum shields could absorb most energy weapons, and their disintegrator cannons could reduce cities to dust. In minutes? Against a pre-spacefaring civilization like Earth, this would be less a battle and more a harvesting operation. First wave commence approach, ordered Zexanor. Maintain stealth protocols until you breach the upper atmosphere. 300. Warships broke formation, their sleek forms accelerating toward the blue planet. Each was the size of a human aircraft carrier, but moved with the grace of a bird of prey. They carried enough firepower to level a continent. Their holds contained thousands of Carthine ground troops, ready to secure whatever remained after the initial bombardment. Commander Drexcar led the first wave, his ship at the forefront. Of the formation, as they swept around the moon and approached Earth from the night side, entering upper atmosphere in 30 seconds, he reported no detection signals from the planet. They remain unaware of our presence. On the command deck of the flagship, Admiral Zexanor watched through the fleet's shared visual feed. First ships began to glow slightly as they hit the outer edges of Earth's atmosphere, the friction creating a beautiful light show against the backdrop of darkness. Begin transmission of surrender demands, ordered Drexcar. All human languages as compiled from their broadcasts. The Carthian message was simple and had worked on countless worlds before. Attention, people of Earth. Your planet is now under the control of the Carthian Dominion. Resistance is futile and will result in your extinction. Surrender immediately, and you will be permitted to live as productive members of our empire. The ships continued their descent, now visible as brilliant streaks of light to anyone looking up at the night sky. They were halfway through the mesosphere when Commander Drexcar noticed something strange on his sensors. Admiral, the Earth. Satellites are ... changing. On the display, the supposedly primitive communication satellites were transforming. Panels shifted, revealing hidden components. Weapons systems unfolded from what had appeared to be solar arrays. In an instant, the facade of technological backwardness vanished as hundreds of orbital defense platforms activated simultaneously. Evasive. Action, shouted Drexcar. But the warning came too late. The Earth defense grid fired as one. Beams of intensely focused energy sliced through the night, striking the lead Carthian ships with unerring precision. The supposedly impenetrable quantum shields flickered and failed against weapons, specifically calibrated to their frequency. Across the planet, in military bases hidden underground, beneath mountains, and beneath the oceans, human commanders watched, with grim satisfaction, as the first alien ships erupted into balls of flame. Years of preparation, decades of secret development, all for this moment. 50 ships lost, reported a panicked Carthian officer. Their weapons, they're not primitive at all. They're targeting our shield harmonics. Admiral Zexanor watched in disbelief as the carefully orchestrated first wave dissolved into chaos. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were falling from the sky in burning fragments. The remaining vessels scattered, trying to regroup and adapt to this unexpected resistance. More weapons activating, called Drexcar, his voice now tinged with fear. Ground-based energy projectors, missile systems unlike anything in our database, and, Admiral, they have ships. hidden in orbit, disguised as debris. The human counterattack intensified. From launch sites across the planet, missiles with advanced guidance systems targeted the invaders. From the ocean depths, submarines surfaced just long enough to fire specialized projectiles designed to track dark matter emissions. And most shocking of all, the various human nations which intelligence had indicated were divided and often hostile to one another, were clearly acting in perfect coordination. This was a trap, realized Zexanor, his crest flattening against his skull in the Carthian expression of shock. They knew we were coming. They'd been preparing. On the main communication channel, Drexkar's final transmission came through. Broken by static as his ship began to break apart, they were waiting for us. Earth is not what we thought. Abort the invasion. I repeat, abort the transmission cut off abruptly as his ship exploded. Across Earth's upper atmosphere, the night sky blazed with the destruction of what was supposed to be an invincible advance force. Of the 300 ships that had entered Earth's atmosphere, nearly a third were already destroyed or disabled, the rest retreating in disarray. Admiral Zexanor stood motionless on his command deck, watching the unthinkable unfold before him. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen a supposedly primitive world mount such an effective defense. The implications were staggering and terrifying. Recall the first wave, he ordered finally. Prepare the full fleet for engagement. Whatever these humans are, they have made a grave mistake in revealing their true capabilities to the Carthian Dominion. But deep in his warrior's heart, a feeling he had never experienced before began to take root. Fear. Dawn broke over a world at war. As the third day of the invasion began, Admiral Zexanor faced the unthinkable. Over 3,000 Carthian ships had been destroyed or disabled. Nearly a third of his once mighty armada, the remaining vessels regrouped. In higher orbit, outside the range of Earth's most effective defense systems, on the Admiral's command deck, the mood was grim. We've underestimated them at every turn, Zexanor admitted to his war council. But we still have the advantage in numbers. We will adapt our tactics and overwhelm them. Below on Earth, and underground command centers connected by secure networks, humanity's military leaders prepared to unveil weapons they had hoped would never be needed. The time for holding back was over, in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. General Sarah Mitchell gave the order that would reveal America's most closely guarded secret: activate Project Lazarus. Deep underground, massive electromagnetic railguns each the length of 5 football fields powered up. These weapons, hidden inside mountains for decades, could fire projectiles at near-light speed with such force that even Carthian shields couldn't react quickly enough to stop them. Target the command ships, ordered General Mitchell. Fire when ready? The mountains themselves seemed to shudder as the railguns fired. There was no dramatic light show, no thunderous sound in space, just silent destruction as hypersonic projectiles tore through Carthian vessels before they could detect the attack. 20 ships shattered in the first volley, including 3 of Zexanor's command vessels. Across the Pacific, Admiral Zhang Wei of the Chinese Navy gave similar orders. Deploy the Ghost Fleet. In the ocean depths, specially designed submarines activated experimental drives that allowed them to phase partially out of normal space, becoming nearly undetectable until the moment they launched their weapons. These vessels rose to firing position, released their payloads of advanced nuclear torpedoes, and vanished again before Carthian sensors could lock onto them. The torpedoes shot upward through the atmosphere and detonated in precisely calculated positions near clusters of Carthian ships. The explosions weren't meant to destroy directly, but to create massive electromagnetic pulses that fried Carthian systems, leaving the ships drifting helplessly in space. From Russian territory came perhaps the most unexpected defense. Dmitry Volkov activated what was known only as the Winter Protocol. Across Siberia, hidden weather control stations focused their energy on the atmosphere above, create targeted storm fronts at the invasion coordinates. Volkov commanded. The technology, developed through decades of secret research, allowed for precise manipulation of weather patterns. Supercooled air was directed upward to create intense, localized ice storms exactly where Carthian ships were attempting to enter the atmosphere. Vessels that moments before had been preparing for attack suddenly found themselves encased in thick layers of ice, their systems failing as temperatures dropped to impossible levels. In orbit, a massive space battle raged unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. Earth's hidden fleet, disguised for years as defunct satellites, space junk, and abandoned space stations suddenly came to life. These vessels, though smaller than the Carthian warships, were designed specifically to combat the alien technology. The human ships moved with stunning agility, attacking in coordinated patterns that confused Carthian targeting systems. They struck from multiple angles, focusing fire on weak points that only became apparent after years of studying the crashed scout ship. What they lacked in raw power, they made up for in tactical precision. Admiral Zexanor watched with growing rage as his fleet suffered continuous losses. "They know us too well," he growled. "Target their power grids and communication networks. Without coordination, their defense falls apart." The Carthian ships that remained operational changed tactics, focusing intense fire on Earth's infrastructure. Power plants exploded, transmission lines melted, and satellite uplink stations were reduced to rubble. In major cities, lights flickered and died as electrical grids failed. For a brief moment, it seemed the Carthians had found a weakness. Some human defense systems faltered as they lost connection to Central Command. The aliens pressed their advantage, pushing deeper into the atmosphere to strike at now exposed military installations. But again, the humans had prepared for this. Backup systems activated, running on independent power sources. Emergency protocol shifted control to local commanders, who continued the fight without hesitation. What should have been chaos instead became a more distributed defense, with each region adapting independently to the threats they faced. Frustrated by humanity's resilience, Admiral Zexanor made a fateful decision. Prepare the Worldbreaker. He ordered, target their moon. The Worldbreaker was the Carthians' planet-killer weapon, a massive device that could destabilize planetary bodies. By targeting Earth's moon, they would create catastrophic tidal effects that would devastate coastal regions worldwide and throw the planet's entire ecosystem into chaos. The weapon, a massive ring-shaped device, larger than any single ship, moved into position between Earth and its moon. Energy began to build as the device powered up, creating a visible distortion in space as it prepared to fire, in a secure bunker beneath what remained of Houston. NASA's surviving mission control team tracked the weapon's energy signature. Targeting the moon, reported Dr. Elena Rodriguez, her face illuminated by emergency lighting. If that thing fires at full power, we're looking at extinctional-level events across every coastline. General Mitchell's voice came through on the emergency channel. Deploy Operation Lightbender. Now. From hidden hangars around the world, 12 small spacecraft launched, each piloted by a volunteer who understood this was likely a one-way mission. These craft, incorporating both human innovation and reverse-engineered alien technology, were designed for one specific purpose: to intercept and redirect energy weapons. As the Worldbreaker reached full charge, human ships formed a precise formation in the path of its beam. The Carthian weapon fired, releasing a blinding stream of energy toward the moon. The human vessels, instead of being vaporized, somehow caught the energy, their hulls glowing white-hot as special materials absorbed the immense power. For 3 agonizing seconds, the small ships held the energy, their systems straining beyond their design limits. Then, in perfect synchronization, they redirected the combined power knot at the moon. But back at the Carthian fleet, the redirected beam cut through space like a sword of light, striking the heart of the Carthian formation. Ships caught in its path didn't just explode, they disintegrated completely, reduced to their component atoms in an instant. The blast continued outward in a devastating wave, destroying hundreds more vessels before finally dissipating. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominance, Admiral Zexanor watched in horror as nearly 1,000 ships vanished in seconds. His fleet, once the pride of the Dominion, was now reduced to less than half its original strength. As he struggled to comprehend this devastating turn of events, a priority communication arrived from the Carthian homeworld. It was brief, just 5 words, but they filled him with dread. Disengage and retreat. Earth is Protoclass 7. The blood drained from Zexanor's face. In all his years of service, he had never encountered a Protoclass 7 designation. Few living. Carthians had. It was a classification from ancient times, a warning from the early days of the Empire. Whatever Earth was, the Carthians had made a terrible mistake in attacking it. Protoclass 7. The designation echoed in Admiral Zexanor's mind as he stared at the message from High Command. His second-in-command, Vextal, looked at him with all four eyes widened in confusion. "Admiral, what does this classification mean?" she asked Zex Nor. S scales had paled to an ashen gray. "It means we have awakened something that should have been left alone." He turned to the view screen showing Earth, seeing the blue planet with new understanding and growing fear. The early days of our empire, our ancestors encountered worlds that carried special markings in their genetic and geological structures. Worlds that had been ... modified. Modified? By whom? The precursor, Zexonar said quietly. The race that came before all others, who vanished 20,000 years ago. They left behind ... safeguards. Throughout what remained of the Carthian fleet, now less than 5,000 ships, the truth spread quickly. Earth was not just another world to conquer. It was a trap, a weapon, a defense mechanism created by an ancient civilization to prevent exactly the kind of empire the Carthians had built. Science Officer Melchora reviewed data that now made terrible sense. "The humans aren't just another species," she reported, her voice trembling. "Their DNA contains dormant sequences unlike anything we've seen before. Sequences that appear to be activating under the stress of our attack," as if confirming her. Analysis reports flooded in from ground forces still fighting on Earth's surface. Human soldiers who had been fighting with normal capabilities hours earlier were now displaying enhanced reflexes, strength, and endurance. Some could anticipate Carthian attacks before they happened, seeming to know instinctively where to move and when to fire. "They're evolving in real time," Melchora whispered. "The precursors engineered them to develop rapidly under existential threat. What we're seeing now is only the beginning." On Earth, even the planet itself seemed to be fighting back against the invaders. In regions where Carthian forces had established ground bases, dormant volcanoes suddenly roared to life. But instead of erupting randomly, the lava flows moved with unnatural precision, seeking out and destroying alien encampments while leaving human settlements untouched. Along coastlines where Carthian ships had landed to deploy troops, waves rose up not in normal tidal patterns, but in targeted surges that smashed alien vessels while washing harmlessly around human structures. It was as if the planet's natural systems had been programmed to recognize friend from foe in laboratories and command centers across Earth. Human scientists made intuitive leaps in understanding the captured Carthian technology. Weapons that should have taken years to analyze were comprehended in hours, modified, and improved upon in days. The humans weren't just defending, they were adapting, evolving, becoming something more than they had been before the invasion. Admiral Zexanor knew the Dominion had only one chance for survival. "Order all remaining ships to withdraw beyond the moon," he commanded. "We need distance to regroup and consider our options." The Carthian vessels that could still maneuver began a tactical retreat, pulling away from Earth's orbit toward the relative safety of lunar distance. For a brief moment, it seemed they might escape the nightmare they had created. Then Human Communications Officer Chen intercepted a transmission from the retreating fleet. "Sir," she reported to General Mitchell, "they're regrouping behind the moon. Standard Carthian tactical doctrine suggests they'll launch a coordinated strike from there, using the moon to shield their approach." General Mitchell nodded grimly. "Then it's time to show them our last card." She opened a secure channel to Lunar Base Alpha, the secret installation built into the dark side of the moon over the past 30 years. "Commander Reyes, power up the Artemis array." On the far side of the moon, in a massive crater hidden from Earth's view, sections of the lunar surface began to shift and separate. What had appeared to be natural formations revealed themselves as disguise panels covering the largest weapon humanity had ever constructed, a massive energy projector built directly into the moon itself, drawing power from experimental fusion. Reactors buried deep beneath the lunar surface as the Carthian fleet approached the dark side of the moon, Thinking themselves temporarily safe from Earth's defenses, their sensors detected an enormous power surge. Energy buildup on the lunar surface, cried a Carthian officer. Source unknown. Power levels beyond anything we've encountered. Before Admiral Zexanor could order evasive action, the Artemis array fired. A wave of gravimetric distortion erupted. From the lunar surface, not a beam or an explosion, but a ripple in space itself that expanded outward like a tsunami. Ships caught in its path weren't destroyed by heat or force. They were crushed as if gravity itself had suddenly multiplied 1,000-fold in their immediate vicinity. Metal, crystal, and flesh compressed to impossible density in seconds. 1,000 Carthian ships imploded simultaneously, reduced to tiny, superdense fragments that scattered across space like metallic dust. Aboard the Eternal Dominance, which had barely avoided the main wave, Admiral Zexanor watched in horror, as his fleet was decimated yet again. Of the 9,900 ships he had brought to conquer Earth, fewer than 300 now remained operational, most damaged. All terrified as the survivors struggled to regroup. Every communication system aboard the Carthian vessels suddenly activated simultaneously. On view screens, holographic projectors, and personal devices. The same image appeared: a council of humans seated at a semicircular table, their faces grave but determined. The central figure, a woman with silver hair and the bearing of a natural leader, spoke directly to Zexanor. Carthian Fleet, this is Admiral Helena Chen of Earth's Unified Defense Council. You have witnessed only a fraction of our defensive capabilities. We have studied your kind since your scout ship crashed on our world 70 years ago. We have prepared for this day. She leaned forward, her eyes seeming to lock with Zexanor's despite the vast distance between them. You have one chance to surrender. There will not be another. In that moment, looking at the human's face, Admiral Zexanor understood the true meaning of Protoclass 7. Earth wasn't just a planet with special defenses. Humans weren't just another species with unusual abilities. They were custodians, guardians, created to ensure that no empire could ever dominate the galaxy unchallenged, and the Carthian Dominion, in its arrogance, had awakened them before they had naturally reached their full potential. As the human admiral waited for his response, Zexanor faced the most difficult decision of his life: surrender, and face the humiliation of defeat, or continue a fight that could no longer be won. Behind him, sensors detected new energy buildup from Earth and its moon. Their time was running out. Admiral Zexanor stared at the image of Admiral Helena Chen, his four eyes narrowing as he made the decision that would define the legacy of the Carthian Dominion. Surrender was unthinkable. In 1,000 years of conquest, no Carthian fleet had ever yielded to an enemy. He would not be the first. Prepare the Void Cascade, he ordered, his voice cold and final. His officers froze, scales paling to ghostly white. Admiral Subcommander Vextal whispered, "The Void Cascade is forbidden." The Dominion Council outlawed its use after the Centauri disaster. It tears reality itself. I know what it does, Zexanor, cut her off. And I know we have no choice. Either we use it, or the Dominion falls. Deep within the Eternal Dominance, technicians unlocked a heavily secured chamber that had remained sealed since the ship's construction. Inside stood a device unlike any other in the Carthian arsenal, midnight black sphere suspended in a crystalline cradle, its surface moving like liquid despite being solid. The Void Cascade, a weapon so terrible that after its first test, the Dominion had decreed it would never be used in actual combat. On Earth, monitoring stations detected unusual energy patterns from the remaining Carthian fleet. Something's happening, reported Dr. Rodriguez, studying readings that made no scientific sense. They're generating a quantum signature that's impossible. It's as if they're trying to create a rupture in space-time itself. Admiral Chen's face hardened. They're deploying a doomsday weapon. She turned to her communications officer. Send the signal to Mars base. Activate Keystone Protocol. Cross the 140 million miles separating Earth from Mars. A secure transmission. Reached a facility hidden beneath the red planet's surface? There, in a chamber, untouched by human hands until 30 years ago. A team of scientists monitored an artifact of clearly alien design, a golden pyramid covered in symbols that matched no known language. Keystone Protocol, authorized, confirmed. The base commander, initiating activation sequence. As Carthian technicians prepared the Void Cascade for deployment, Admiral Zexanor addressed his remaining ships. Today, we face an enemy engineered by the precursors themselves. We cannot win through conventional means. The Void Cascade will reset this battlefield, consuming Earth and its defenders, while allowing us to escape. What he didn't say was that the weapon might consume much more than that. The Centauri disaster had resulted in the disappearance of an entire star system, but desperation had overcome caution. Void Cascade at full power, reported the weapon officer. Ready to deploy on your command. Zexanor took one final look at the blue planet that had cost him so much. Fire. The black sphere pulsed once, then seemed to collapse in on itself before exploding outward in a wave of absolute darkness. Space itself tore open as a swirling vortex formed between the moon and Earth, growing rapidly as it consumed everything in its path. Light bent around its edges, stars behind it disappeared, and the laws of physics began to break down in its vicinity. On Earth, millions watched in horror as a growing black hole appeared in their sky. Scientists knew that once it reached a certain size, nothing would stop it from consuming their planet entirely. In the hidden base on Mars, the precursor artifact had fully activated. The golden pyramid now hovered above its containment chamber, spinning faster and faster as it glowed with increasing intensity. Energy output beyond measurable levels, reported a scientist, her voice filled with awe. It's responding to the space-time distortion. Without warning, the pyramid released its power not as a destructive force, but as a brilliant golden light that shot across space toward Earth. As it traveled, it expanded into a shimmering shield that enveloped the entire planet, a protective bubble of energy that shone like a newborn star. When the advancing darkness of the Void Cascade met this golden shield, the effect was immediate and spectacular. Instead of being consumed, the shield absorbed the Void Cascade's energy, pulsed once with blinding intensity, then reflected the dark energy back toward its source. The Carthian fleet had no time to react. The reversed Void Cascade engulfed them, a swirling maelstrom of destructive force that they themselves had unleashed. Ships vanished by the hundreds, either torn apart or pulled into pocket dimensions from which they would never return. On the bridge of the eternal dominance, chaos reigned. Control systems failed, view screens shattered, and the hull began to buckle under forces it was never designed to withstand. Emergency jump, Zexanor ordered, clinging to his command chair as the ship shuddered around him. Get as many ships out as possible. Across the remaining fleet, 17 ships managed to activate their emergency jump drives, not to flee to safety, but to escape just far enough to carry a warning to the Dominion and all other spacefaring races. The eternal dominance was not among them. Admiral Zexanor remained on his bridge, watching as his flagship disintegrated around him, accepting the consequences of his final decision. The reversed Void Cascade collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but scattered debris where the mighty Carthian armada had once been. Of 9,900 ships that had come to conquer Earth, only 17 broken vessels limped away through hyperspace, their systems barely functioning, their crews traumatized by what they had witnessed on Earth. The golden shield faded gradually, its energy dispersing harmlessly into space. As it disappeared, the planet seemed somehow changed, more vibrant, more alive, as if the energy had awakened something long dormant in its very core in cities around the world. Humans emerged from shelters to see clear skies once again. The invasion was over. They had survived. But many sensed they had been changed by the experience in ways they didn't yet understand. Scientists began collecting the vast trove of Carthian technology scattered across the planet, recognizing that it would accelerate Earth's development by centuries. Military leaders established a permanent defense network extending throughout the solar system, determined never again to be caught unprepared. And deep within a secure facility beneath the United Nations building in New York, human leaders gathered, around a holographic interface that had activated after the battle. The image of a being unlike any species known to humanity appeared, tall, luminous, with features that seemed both ancient and timeless. Children of Earth, the precursor hologram, spoke, its voice resonating with knowledge accumulated across eons. Today you have fulfilled the first part of your purpose. You were seated on this world not merely to exist, not merely to survive, but to become guardians of a galaxy where conquest is no longer tolerated. The human leaders listened in awe as the hologram explained humanity's true heritage, not just another evolutionary accident, but a carefully designed sentinel species, created to reach its full potential only when threatened with extinction. The stars await you now, the precursor image concluded, not as conquerors, but as protectors. This is your inheritance. The 17 Carthian ships that reached their homeworld brought not just a tale of devastating defeat, but a message. Intercepted from Earth's broadcasts, we will be watching. The Carthian Dominion, for the first time in its 1,000-year history, began to dismantle its war fleets. Other empires who received the transmission did the same. Across the galaxy, a new era began shaped by the whispered legend of a small, blue world that stood against 9,900 warships and sent a message written in the wreckage of 9,883 of them Earth had awakened, and the universe would never be the same.